Good evening. Welcome to
Ha-
another edition of Building Wealth and Health live stream.
What
Dr.
is
Matt.
up, everybody?
Dr. Matt is in the house.
Yes, yes. How's it going? How's it going, my friend?
Good. Did you like our little intro? Is it a little spooky?
Very spooky.
Yeah. I think it was meshing
Yeah,
well with what we're going to talk about tonight because, everyone out
yeah.
there is a zombie now. So
Exactly,
actually, I'm beginning to
exactly.
think they might be after 6 weeks of nonsense that I've been grinding hard on. I'm beginning to think that people may have less brain cells overall, just in general. Just in general.
Yeah, the world can occur that way for sure. In many
Yeah.
ways, in many ways. Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Like, how much energy and focus do you put on that kind of stuff? And
Hmm.
it's hard. It's hard to. Yeah, it's just hard. So.
Look, you're less important,
You go. We have
better.
bigger. That's
Eh,
awesome. Yeah,
eh,
move us around.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to. There's new toys on this thing. I'm just fooling
yeah,
around with,
yeah,
but then I kind of get cut off here. I don't know. It's fine.
yeah,
Um. So, Dr. Ray,
yeah.
here we are.
Yes, my friend. We are here. We are talking about building wealth and health
Hmm.
and our thoughts and ramblings on state of things, state of the world.
State of the world and how to stay the course
How to,
individually in the state of
yeah,
the world. That's
how
kind
to
of what we always
navigate
try
it.
to how to navigate everything is
Hmm.
it seems like the goalposts keep moving and
Hmm.
you keep
They
kicking
do,
hoping
don't
to
they?
score. Yeah. Yeah. Just I
Yeah.
mean just in every facet of life, you're seeing things change all the time with, what to do for your health and things to be precautious of and
Hmm.
you know, this
Yeah.
isn't working anymore. Don't do that. Or, you've even heard the FDA recently say, no, these things are no longer allowed for certain treatments of you know what. And it's
Yeah.
just constantly changing. Um,
Totally.
and that's, it's like, what do you want to, what should you be listening to? Who should you be talking to? How do I stay the course? How do I navigate what's going on? Same thing with financial markets and real estate and everything you hear out there constantly is changing at a more
Hmm.
rapid rate now. And
Yeah.
um,
Totally.
there's so many different narratives that are thrown at all of us. And it's becoming it was confusing. And then it was like, well, maybe I'm starting to figure this out. And then it becomes confusing again. And I've had people reach out to me for many different things for, you
Mhm.
know, all kinds of situations and events that have happened, even just personally, locally with us.
Yeah.
And people
Yeah.
are just utterly confused. I think they're utterly exhausted. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
here we are.
It's pretty exhausting, and I think there's a lot of yeah. I think people's nervous systems are really fried right now. And
Hmm.
and we've talked a little bit about well, I'm sure at some point we've talked a little bit kind of about how the nervous system has sort of programs within it that kind of run the show behind the scenes. And I think what we're seeing right now is such a well, it's not that new, to be honest, but it's like heightened up even more with how much kind of in this fight or flight state
Hmm.
that people are in. And you know when you're coming from when you're when you're in that state, there's a lot of challenges for how you show up in the world, things that you do, because you're really just reacting to the world, right? You're really just in
Hmm.
this kind of survival reaction mode. And there's not a lot of choice involved with that. It's kind
Right.
of
Yeah.
just like, well, I better do this or I'll die, kind of a sensation, really. And it's not
Hmm.
conscious. That's the thing. It's not like people are walking around consciously doing that. But um, yeah, that's what we're seeing. And I think we're seeing it, from financial markets to health to politics to family dynamics to
I'm
you know
seeing I'm even
just a lot.
seeing people that own businesses that are kind of shooting from the hip at the moment, kind of guttural
Hmm.
reactions,
Yeah.
and even just talking with some people recently, just saying, how uncertain they are of what direction they're going to move and how
Yeah.
what they're going to take on, even in like the home building world, is
Hmm.
what do I take on this year? Do I scale back? Do I?
Sure.
I mean, my electrician literally told me he's going to take a lot more time off. I mean, he's been doing it a long time. He's financially he's in a decent spot right now.
Yeah.
But it's not because of the fact I've got lots of money and I'm taking time off. It's more of a I don't really know what direction to go right now, and I don't want
Hmm.
to just continue to like plod along,
Right.
especially in an environment where we've been plodding along for too long and like
Yeah.
look around like, wait, wasn't I already here? I feel like I'm already been here,
Hmm.
you know?
Totally.
So
Yeah.
there's a lot of that too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's tough when you feel like things are piled upon you, and you
Hmm.
have to, how do you manage your own experience, because at the end of the day, so much of this stuff we have zero control over, like
Right.
absolutely none. Like,
Right.
don't delude yourself thinking you're gonna have any impact at the level of like Russia, Ukraine,
Right.
like you know what I mean? It's like
Yep.
you don't now, but you have your own experience, your own space that you can actually create and be. And so I think that's kind of where I look at all this, and that's what I with my patients, just trying to really bring it back to that, because these things impact people's health and then impact their decisions on everything that they're doing, whether it's,
Oh yeah.
and especially if we're talking about building wealth too. I mean, these are decisions that around your money, around your finances, and
Hmm.
all of that, and like you're saying, where you work, and it's how can we do it in a place that's accessing all of our brain and allowing us to make choice and not just be in a state of complete like reaction and just
Hmm. How do you make real decisions anymore?
yeah,
And
yeah,
like
very
you're
hard.
saying, yeah, navigation becomes very difficult without
Mhm.
any tools at all. You're just literally looking
Mhm.
around and looking up at the sky.
Mhm.
And what's happened and what's happening is people are just it becomes comfortable just to, I mean, like as monkey see, monkey do, like I heard as a kid. It becomes
Mhm.
very comfortable to just say, well, I mean, it seems like most people are doing this, or most people are
Mhm.
going here, or most people have made this decision. I mean, you're
Mhm.
seeing that in the stock market for sure. There's a
Right.
lot of uncertainty
Right.
right now. I mean, we just had the Fed chair speaking, Jerome Powell, again today, and he had a discussion about after their last meeting, and kind of basically speaking on and answering questions to the Fed minutes,
Mhm.
and the open minutes, and discussing the next 4 quarters of the year in the markets, and what does that look like. And that's we're
Yeah.
talking about bonds and stocks, and I mean, a lot of that has to do with real estate, but we're also
Yeah.
talking about what the direction of where the money is going to be going,
Mhm.
who's dictating how much we're going to borrow. I
Mhm.
mean, obviously they're in charge of all these things, and there's anticipation for traders in the market, but there's also long-term investors. There's people that just are putting money away and they want to know what direction.
Mhm.
And this whole looking around part is, well, it seems like everyone's ripping their money out of the markets right now.
Mhm.
I guess I will.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just like, well, but everyone else is doing that. And I haven't had a chance, and I'm exhausted to think about what I should
Mhm.
do. And I don't know where to
Yeah.
go because I'm coming at
Yeah.
these different directions. Just, well, I'll just sell everything. I literally know two people that yesterday like sold half their portfolio. And I'm like, what are you doing? And these are
Yeah.
young people. Like there's, dude, they're
Yeah.
young. And I'm it's like, you have so much time. Don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And
everyone
I
else
get,
did.
yeah, everyone else did. And, it's, I think people are seeing so much of just seeing how corrupt it is, how manipulated it is. And there's so much stuff
Sure,
that
sure.
there's that coming up too. And people are like, do I want to participate in this? But yet,
Mhm.
I, again, how do you choose? Like, how do you make your decisions? Are you, are you coming at these things from a place of fear and,
Mhm.
like you said, everyone else is doing it, I'm just going to go? Or are you, is there some, can you come from a place of like certainty and clarity and that's something that I don't think people really do well because
Mm-mm.
we're not really taught that. We're not really programmed like that.
No.
We're actually programmed to do what everyone around us or what like the people that we deem as authorities, like parents, teachers, you know, preachers,
Hmm.
doctors, whatever, tell us to do, and give away give away a lot of our, you know, our decisions, our sovereignty around these things, um, and it's not to say you don't learn and get educated. Yeah, I mean, as we've talked about this, this is like what we talk about all the time, right? Like,
Hmm.
how, educating yourself, like connecting to people and things to learn. But then you really have to. It is about your decision and how you decide to make, you know, your moves.
Yep. Yep. That's what has to you have to like have these tools ahead of
Hmm.
environments like this and just you
Totally.
and then and the hardest part I know, and this is for just human beings in general, is trusting that those tools and those products that
Hmm.
you've developed inside of you actually work
Hmm.
and will stand the test of time,
Hmm.
and you'll be tested on those things, and people are
Hmm.
getting really tested with a lot of stuff right now, and they're just
Hmm.
you start questioning I mean, I'm personally
For sure.
responsible. I'll take responsibility for that. I've I've been tested immensely in the last 2.5 years like everybody else, but
Hmm.
even the last 6 weeks, I've questioned my decision making or my ability to perform on certain
Hmm.
tasks or my ability to have the expertise to say, I shouldn't be being redirected by these people because they're not doing the right things. And I need to stand my ground and say, no, 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 hold on a
Yeah.
second. This is why I'm
Yeah.
here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard sometimes, but
Yeah.
trusting those tools is so
Hmm.
important. It's when you get into these environments, that's when you got
For
to really
sure.
lean on it, right?
Yeah.
And not follow the
Yeah.
zombies into the crowd.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, one of the teachers, people I've learned from, and it talks about practicing things when it doesn't count, in the sense
Mhm.
of like, how do you, like, what do these things, you need them in certain situations, but you have to be, they don't just magically appear unless you're engaged with it and practicing, so
Yeah.
practicing when it doesn't count.
Yeah, exactly. When it yeah, exactly. And that the keyword is practice. Like you want to
Yeah.
just like anything else, playing golf,
Right.
whatever it is, you want to go
Right.
out and you practice so you
Absolutely.
have that muscle memory, in lots of different theories here. You have that muscle memory to trust this is the swing I need to make. It doesn't matter what I'm up against. I'm behind a tree, I'm into the wind, I'm hitting over water.
Yeah.
Just make the same swing you've been practicing over and
Right.
over again. But
Yep.
as
Yep.
human beings, we do break down once in a while, and we
Mhm.
can't work. We can't be perfect, and
Mhm.
we don't always trust that swing. But the more you do it, the
Mhm.
better you get. The less
Mhm.
mistakes are made,
Mhm. Mhm.
and you don't
Yeah.
do what somebody else does, right?
Yep.
Just because, well, but I feel like everyone else is doing that.
Mhm.
And that's I think we've had this discussion a lot recently, but I think that that's certainly what's going on in the world right now. And it's
Mhm.
certainly this is not a new event. This is not something that's new. And as we kind of jump into our topic tonight on mass formation psychosis, I
Mhm.
think um, first of all, what's was really interesting to me this evening before I jumped on is kind of like doing a quick Google search and like a little internet search of
Mhm.
the term and how
Mhm.
if you do it, what blows my mind, because I was just talking to my wife about this. What blows my mind is I looked this up and the first page, if you go to let's just say Google is your search engine, the
Mhm.
first page, everything talks about how it's not true. It doesn't
I know.
exist. It's not a real term. There's no real
Uh-huh.
definition. And
Uh-huh.
before I even like jumped in to find an article that had half of
Uh-huh.
a realistic explanation of this, I went, well, wait a second.
Yeah.
100 years ago, as a freshman in college, I took a semester of psychology, and
Yeah,
this is one of the things we studied.
I know. Oh, it's pretty wild, yeah, how those things just pop up really quick and,
What do
uh
you like, what is going on? This
mhm.
isn't I mean, look at this. This is the title I found
Yeah,
was,
yeah.
one that's this guy kind of sort of
Mhm.
He's not trying to debunk the term, which I thought was funny. I'm like, "That's what are you talking about?
Yeah,
Have you guys ever heard of Nazi Germany?"
I know.
Like, this is
Well,
exactly what I was learning about as a freshman in college in
mhm,
psychology class,
mhm,
was all about that and
mhm.
what that really means. It was like, "What do you mean it doesn't exist? What?
Right,
This is a term that's been used forever."
totally. Yeah, I mean, we should, briefly just sort of summarize what mass formation psychosis is for people, because maybe you don't hear it, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's it's a situation where, and it's often kind of one of those frog in the boiling water situations, right? Where it slowly works its way through. Um, but it's a situation where you start with an isolation
Mhm.
of a group of people, um, and
Isolation meaning remove
yeah,
us from each other.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Take away the
Uh, a-
connections.
yeah, you take away connections, isolate people, isolate them from hearing, you know, different things, meeting with people, talking, things like that,
Mhm.
and and then you have really very insidious taking away of things that people connect with and enjoy. And so once you start doing that, then you can start to, well, what happens then, you just get this big anxiety buildup, right?
Mhm.
So people just get really, really anxious and scared and fear, like really fear driven, right? So
Mhm.
all the things that they had that connected them and that they enjoyed are now gone, and it's but and there's a lot of fear, and then you start to, then this is really the linchpin, is somebody comes in and shows you two things. Number one, kind of why the problem is there, supposedly, and number two, that they have the solution to dealing with it.
Right.
And and so, you think about like you think about Nazi Germany, but you can also look at it in, you know, different cults, you
Mhm.
can look at it with,
This
um,
is a term that just to interrupt you, sorry, but that's the term
yeah,
exactly right that we also learned about because it wasn't trying to I mean, uh, I've now blanked on his name from in Waco. Um,
oh, yeah, Koresh, David
yeah,
Koresh.
David Koresh.
Mhm,
This was another this was another topic we learned about in that class, was talking about
mhm,
David Koresh and the ideology of all of that. I mean, he literally isolated everybody
mhm,
in a compound,
mhm,
but at the same time, it was spun to make this guy look like he was completely crazy,
mhm.
and things had to
Yeah,
be done because of it. So you're isolating people from the actual situation on the outside too, which
yep,
I mean,
yep.
there's another example of that.
It can go, but yeah, oh, there's so many examples. Or like in 1994, when in Rwanda,
Mhm.
the Tutsi, I don't remember, it's the Tutsis killed all the Hutsi. I'm saying that wrong, but
Hutsiots? Yeah, I think that's right.
yeah, they basically, slaughtered their neighbors. It was
Mhm.
like almost 1 million people died. Why? Because they were in this mass psychosis.
Right.
They had this constant fear. They had this division. They had this, uh, all the things that were taken away, and they, oh, here's why. It's because of these people, and here's what you do. And no matter, and the thing about it is, it doesn't matter how crazy the solution is,
Mhm.
and that is, you know, it's kill your neighbor. It's uh, drink this Kool Aid. It's
Mhm.
and but the thing is, that's the only thing. There's only the one solution,
Yes, it comes down
and
to, like, there's just one
uh-huh,
way we can do this. There's
yeah,
one way out of this. There's one way
mhm,
forward. There's whatever
mhm,
it is. There is it's almost utter despair, and
yeah,
you get a human behavioral aspect of, "I don't know what else to do," and
right.
there's someone walks in and goes, "That's okay because I do.
I do. Trust me, follow me.
Follow me now."
Yeah, and then I mean, I think a lot of the really clear examples are like religious cults and things like that,
Mhm.
but it still can happen, in other ways. And I think we've seen that right now in our world with the narrative around sickness and illness and this
Mhm.
virus, and people are, yeah, being kind of, well, I mean, I think they're all kind of in a state of uh, disconnect and delusion around a lot of it right now. And I'm not saying they're
Right.
going to go out and kill their neighbors, but
Right.
man, there's certain things that you're kind of like, whoa, why are you saying it like that? Why are you, why,
It,
you know?
it's very it's become it's an
Mm-hmm.
aggressive stance no
Mm-hmm.
matter which direction someone's coming from on this. It's
Mm-hmm.
everyone's very aggressive about
Yeah.
it and
Yeah.
divisive and
Mm-hmm.
defensive,
Mm-hmm.
and it all is you're right, it's all driven those behaviors, those reactions are all driven by a fear stance
Yep.
because anger and fear are very similar emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and anger is also derived from pure boredom, which is interesting because if you think about the last almost 2.5 years,
mm,
and so many things have been taken away from us as far as like our extracurricular activities or the way we
yeah.
perform those extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
It's in a more minimal amount. There's less of it. And people have pulled away. They've gone out less.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to my dad about that the other day and how he knows several people that own restaurants here and in other states, and they're very successful restaurant owners. And the amount of takeout ordering that's gone up in the last 2.5 years, and even as we've opened restaurants back up, people have come back. Their takeout ordering has skyrocketed, and people's
Mm-hmm.
willingness to just go out and be social anymore
Mm-hmm.
has just I would even say
Mm-hmm.
subconsciously pulled back because they
Yeah.
got into a rhythm and they got into
Yeah.
a behavior,
Yep.
but they don't realize they're not getting those things that were important, and they don't even realize they're important. Like just going out and socializing,
Yeah.
they're bored,
Yeah.
so you make them more angry,
Yeah.
and just
Yeah.
all of that
Well, it's
stuff has happened.
all part of taking away that connection and things like that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, we're all, I think the thing that I really take from learning about this is that we're all susceptible to this,
Right.
and every one of us is. And I mean, that's kind of a, sobering thought,
Hmm.
and, but yeah, it's,
It's scary to think how fast you can change a behavior of an
yeah,
entire globe,
right?
right? You can redirect. I mean, look how fast people have changed their mindset on or their opinion on a lot of different things that have come up, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not just talking about medical decisions
Mm-hmm.
and what's safe and what's not. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
but you've certainly done that. You've driven fear way up, and we've
Mm-hmm.
had this conversation and joked about it before, as if people even understood how many viruses are out there in the world on a
Right.
on any given moment of their lives.
Yeah.
If you explain to them what's going on in the environment, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, people would never leave their homes
Right.
because of what they
Yeah.
know now versus what they didn't understand before.
Oh yeah.
And the disconnect between those, like, well, yeah, but here's how this all works. It's been happening for
Mm-hmm.
tens of millions of years before we even
Mm-hmm.
existed. Like,
Right.
but
Right.
all of a sudden,
Yeah.
I mean, and we've all been guilty of this. Like, someone's like, "Oh yeah, I'm sick. It's probably COVID." Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, you have COVID.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, which is
Right.
always like, "Oh my god."
Yeah.
Well, hold on a second. Why is it? First of all, why is it? Oh my god. When someone said,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, I don't feel well today," we didn't go, "Oh my god, are you sick?" We
Yeah.
didn't freak out
Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
now we do.
Now I do. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I think it just takes a little bit of, I mean, self-reflection and a little bit of, the way I describe it to my patients is I feel like, so I can do this, but I feel like there's people get really enmeshed with their story and with these different things going on, and
Mhm.
it makes it very difficult to see anything. And so the goal is to try to get a little space between, and what I mean by that is like stepping out and of it a little bit, trying to get like that 50, 1,000-foot view
Mhm. Yep.
where you can actually then access some of the choice, whatever it is you want to do. And it's a real important thing to do. And I think because
Mhm.
otherwise you are just spun in this narrative or whatever is going on around you. And we all do it in certain ways of things that we grew up in and believe. And
Right.
I mean, it's all really common, and it's not always necessarily a bad thing, but I think when you start to see, well, it can't, it can just be really destructive too. So,
I think most times it is because you're not thinking for
mhm,
yourself at that point. You're
very much,
becoming
yeah,
reactionary to someone
yeah,
else's decisions, and it's okay if
yeah,
you agree with people or disagree with people, that's one
right,
thing, but
right,
if you're literally just making a guttural reaction,
hmm,
because of, a driven
yeah,
narrative or a driven emotion, and you're not thinking, that can get you in a lot of trouble. I mean, I can't think of a time where that's a good way to handle anything.
hmm, hmm.
Um,
Yeah, we talked about this before, but it's, I think, a perfect time to, bring it back to remembrance, is talking about what, maybe we did. I might have talked about this. I don't remember, but when we're talking about how the brain actually works, so we talked about that, right? Like the limbic part of your brain is
yep.
like the more primitive part of your brain, and then the prefrontal cortex is your more advanced part of your brain.
Mhm.
And so the limbic is survival, very like rudimentary, like just, and that's kind of an early brain. And then the more developed is more about higher levels of thought and awareness and things. But in that stressed out state that we get into, this fear-based state, you're very much in that limbic part of your brain.
Mhm.
You're very much in, and that's all reactivity. It's all just, it's not a lot of thought and choice. It's just kind of go, do. Versus this prefrontal cortex is more of a logical, rational, take things in, understanding part of the brain. And being able to access that in times of challenge is a real important thing to learn how to do.
Mhm.
um, because if you don't, you're, well, it's just, and it's not easy to do even in those situations. So um, and that's um, the simplest way to do that, and this I know we've talked about, is that belly breath, like
Right.
actually connecting to the body in a breath. And it sounds so simple, and it is simple, but it sounds so kind of like, oh, that's all. But yeah, no, it like literally like moves blood into the parts of the brain that actually give you like clarity and choice again.
Mhm. Yeah, and
So,
I mean, just breathing in general when you get into a situation of stress, and the more you get into it, the
hmm,
more you should be doing.
hmm,
People, like, you just don't realize, and then we've talked about
yeah,
this, but you don't realize how beneficial it really is, just because it
yeah,
slows you down.
hmm,
First of all, it slows everything down,
yeah,
physically, emotionally. It
hmm,
forces you to stop and physically,
hmm,
like, think
hmm,
about what you're doing. Your brain takes a break for a
hmm,
second.
hmm.
I mean, I remember when I was a kid, my mom would always tell me, like, Count to 10 before you react like that." Don't
Right,
instantly smack your brother in the face. Don't instantly throw this, whatever. Just when you feel that way, count to 10. But I guarantee you, by the time you get to 10, you won't even care anymore.
right.
And if I actually did that, I'll be damned. She was
Yeah,
right.
he
It's
was
like,
right.
whoa,
Yeah.
I can get back to a normal state.
It's an interesting, taking a breath only happens in the now moment.
Mhm.
It doesn't, it's not something you did in the past or will do later, or in the future. It's always, you're always doing it in the now moment. And when you're consciously doing it, when you're, connecting to that, deep belly breath, it brings, like you said, it slows things down, and the reason for that is because you actually get really present. You get present
Mhm.
into the moment. And so much of the time when we're talking about all this fear and things that people get spun into, it's really a fear of what could happen out, later, or I don't want that what happened before to happen again. So you're like preventing the past, but you're not really. So you're living over there in the past, or you're living, I hope that doesn't happen to me, in the future, and you're not in your body in a present moment state. And that sounds kind of, well, I know some people, it might sound kind of like woo woo a little bit, but it's kind of like, hey, you've experienced it. When you take that breath, you you cut into your body, and you're more centered. And that, from that place, is, I think, where people can make the best. Well, it is the place you can make the best decisions,
Yep.
because you actually have access to do it at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have the ability to be there.
I mean, we've all experienced I mean, or if you've been in like a car accident, like, or I don't know, a flood or a fire or anything where
Mhm.
you're suddenly your life is in danger, or I don't know. I fell on the ice the other day. It's still like the same type of thing. Your body goes
Right.
into this like just freeze state, and you don't have access to actually like know what to do at that moment, you know?
Yep.
And so because the other aspect of fight or flight is actually freeze. So they
Yes,
say,
and I've witnessed that with people before too.
oh,
Yeah.
I totally do that. Like that, not a lot of people. Yeah, I totally have done that personally, and yeah, you don't know what to do, and
Yeah, you just
yeah,
and it becomes
uh,
utterly irrational, right?
oh yeah,
Like the first thing you need to do is move,
right,
but you
right,
can't.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You literally can't,
Yeah.
and so again, and it's because yeah, we're not present, but um, yeah, and I think it's just I think it's super relevant to where we are right now. But in a world that's very tumultuous, in a word,
Mhm.
to say the least, right? Like that's got, um, yeah, things that are uncertain. It's a better way to say it. Like things just aren't as they're tumultuous and they're uncertain.
Yeah, and when you don't know what direction to go and there's uncertainty, it becomes people react in one of two ways. You either and there's very the majority versus minority on this is pretty apparent, but it's more of that. What do I do? I feel comfortable just, because most people do feel comfortable just following the group. Well, if everybody's going this
Yeah,
direction,
yeah,
surely that's the right decision. I mean, when I think about if you're lost, or if you're driving and all of a sudden there's a detour, right? And I mean,
right.
we've all been in this situation. It's like all of a sudden we've been taken off the path of, we understand while we're driving. It's like detour, there's a couple signs, and you're
Yeah,
driving as a group of cars. There's a massive cars just
uh,
driving through this detour, and all of a sudden there's a sign missing, right? And you
right.
drive for a while, and people are just, you can tell when all of a sudden it's like, wait, where's the next sign going to be? Which way
Where
do
do
I
I go?
go? I don't know where I am. And then one person turns a direction, and then someone else like, well, they must know where they're going, so I'll go that way. And the next car is like,
Right.
the more cars that do that, the more like, well,
Uh-huh.
clearly this is the right
Uh-huh.
way. The next thing
Clearly.
you know
Yeah.
is everyone's freaking lost.
Everyone's turning back around.
And the guy, all of a sudden, this first guy, he's like, I don't know why you guys are following me. This is my house right here. I just pulled in my driveway, and everyone's like, oh shit. Where do I go then? What do I do now? And so this guy's, I'll figure it out. And then it's just mass chaos, right? But
Right.
then the fear escalates, and that
Mhm.
nervousness escalates. You start like
Mhm.
you become more and more irrational. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So that guy didn't know where he was
Yeah.
going, and now no one
Yeah.
else does. And
Right.
suddenly the uncertainty is back, and you freak
Right.
out again. And that's what's happening right now. I
Mhm.
mean, I've literally
Mhm.
people can't think straight. They're exhausted.
Mhm.
They're
Yeah.
angry. They're they're certainly defensive. Um,
Yeah. They're confused and
they're
yeah,
confused.
it's and I like that you said it in that way because I feel like, well, for me, it helps me like remember that, well, it helps me have a little bit of compassion and not it's it's challenging, sometimes, but I
Yeah.
just to remember that, you know, people they're struggling, and
Hmm.
they're often not even talking to you from there's that state of just clarity. They're talking to you from that nebulous freak out, wounded, scared place.
Yep.
S-
Totally.
And it's hard it can be pretty abusive. So that's
It
not good.
yeah.
But
It gets that way for sure.
yeah, which is
Um,
unfortunate.
it
But
is. It is. But in leaning on kind of this, what is now being deemed a theory, or an it's, what's funny to me is like even this part of it becomes that mass formation psychosis,
yeah,
because it's
right.
like
Oh, totally. Oh yeah.
steer it away from the act, take
Uh,
everyone away,
Remember,
move away.
this is the one solution. It's over here.
It doesn't
Can't go.
matter what this guy is saying. It doesn't
Don't
matter
look over
what this
here.
person's credentials
Yeah.
are. It doesn't matter what they've done
Yeah.
in the past. It doesn't matter that
Yeah.
we've actually
Yeah.
used these people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now we're gonna wipe the slate clean. None of this is going to work anymore. But it's been
Mhm.
working forever. It doesn't matter,
Mhm.
because now we're here. And doesn't
Yeah.
matter what we're talking about, doesn't matter what topic it is, it doesn't matter. All of that is out the window now. And people are like, well, the first thing they think is, well, how can it all of a sudden be out the window? Does that mean everything I've been doing for the last umpteen years is wrong? Well, that
Hmm.
creates fear. That
Right.
creates uncertainty. And
Right.
which is part of the program. And I call this a program. That's part of the program is, well, yeah,
Hmm.
now I've got you.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Yeah.
Machiavellianism in a way because it's basically
Hmm.
what's better? What's better in ruling a people? Is it better to rule them by fear or by love? Well, it's fear
Hmm. Yeah.
because
But people in
there's
fear are
greater
easier to. But people in
100%.
fear follow. Yeah. That was actually. I mean, those are the quotes from like, what's his name? Goebel, the German, the, the Nazi they had on trial, and he
Mhm.
basically laid all this out. He said, yeah, you don't have to. You just have to convince people there's something to fear,
Right.
and then
You
they'll follow you.
you create a narrative of fear and they'll follow you.
Yep. Yep.
It's actually very simple because they were
Yeah.
asking him on trial, how in the world
Right.
did you get so many
Hmm.
super
Yeah.
intelligent people and
Right.
a mass of them to
Yeah.
all get behind this really destructive,
Hmm.
terrible,
Hmm.
violent behavior?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
you said it's very easy.
Yeah.
I mean, throughout history, this is how you do
Happens
it.
over and over.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think
And
go ahead.
go
Yeah,
ahead.
go
No,
for it.
go ahead. Doesn't
Also, because I think it speaks to like humans' desire to want to fit in and be
Mhm.
connected, but it also speaks to really the lack of knowing who you are at your core and
Yep.
drawing that identity from the outside, the country, the person, the religion, the whatever, that then creates this sort of sense of identity for you versus this knowing yourself intimately, at a deep,
Yep.
deep level.
How confident are you
Yeah.
that in practice you feel so good? How
Mhm.
confident that what you're practicing is
Mhm.
actually going to work and
Mhm.
will sustain the test of time? It's all about that. It's all
Totally.
about trusting in yourself.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
we were talking about at the beginning, it's really hard sometimes. And that's
Uh-huh.
just part of being a human being, and that's how we
Sure.
make mistakes. Um, but
Yeah.
trusting, you gotta trust that tool, those kit that the kit that you have. You
Mhm.
gotta trust the
Mhm.
skill set you have, whatever it
Mhm.
is.
Yeah.
Even when it looks like, man, but nobody else is doing this,
Mhm.
or everyone's mad at me because I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Maybe I am wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe I've missed something here. Are you sure? Well, I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm sure. Well, you better be.
I know. Yeah, I just feel it's I feel this is the way things have been for a long, long time, but it's like
Mhm.
now it's like everyone is in this state, you know?
Yep.
I feel like the whole world is in this state to some degree, and
Yep.
that's new, like, and that's big because, on the I'm really am a very optimistic person. I really don't get lost in the doom and gloom narrative too often, but
Mhm.
so when I see like I see it almost like this really big opportunity, that
Right.
people can actually start to step out of some of this programming, like you said, these things that we all have been engaged in unconsciously for who knows how long, millennia,
Right. Yeah.
and anyway, that's exciting. I mean, that's a little bit of a bigger conversation, I think, around like consciousness and things like that, but it's all kind of the same conversation in a way too.
Mhm.
So just an opportunity for people to really to start to connect to that deep part of themselves and not just be a cog in the machine.
Yeah, it's an opportunity, it's a moment to step out and
Mm.
say, I do trust what I'm doing. I do trust
Mhm.
what I've established as myself,
Yeah.
and you can gain a mass amount of confidence by
Yeah.
standing in there and saying this is me, and
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if everyone went through that door. That's the
Yeah.
wrong way in.
Yeah. It's you remember the one door rule?
Yes. It's
So
I still think about that going into like
totally.
public
So
places.
the one door rule is something that I think I was the one who brought it up first because when we were in college, people would be going into like a building and one person would open there's two doors usually into the
Mhm.
building and somebody would open the door and then people basically kind of just queued up one behind the other to go through that door
Yep.
until somebody opened the other door. And then you had two doors open and then everybody goes in, but it just for
But there'd
some
be a
reason.
line that would be backed up sometimes
Yeah,
going
some
into, one of those
s-
buildings, and people were
it,
just waiting to go through that
yeah,
one door
one
until
door.
someone walked
Yeah,
around and grabbed the other door and
yeah,
walked in, and people were like, "How'd that guy
yeah,
do
yeah.
that?"
It's like that. So we called it the one door rule. Oh, there's only one. You can only go through this one door here. There's a one
Right?
door rule here.
This one
And
broken? No?
yes,
Oh.
so we'd go up and open the other door and start.
And people would start walking through that
But it
one,
is kind
follow
of
you
like
in.
that. It's
It's
kind of like
totally
that.
like that.
People just kind of just aren't thinking, and
It's a well, I mean, you talked about delusion earlier,
yeah.
but it's a shared thought process,
Hmm.
and it
Yeah.
becomes a shared delusion of, like, you start assuming. It's
Hmm.
like almost like the telephone rule. It's like, well,
Right.
that clearly has to be broken because nobody's used that door.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll just stand in line and wait my turn to go in,
Well,
and
it's a
then
bit risky to try it, right? Like, what if it's locked?
everyone's gonna stare at you. Yeah, well,
Then
you're
you're
gonna
gonna,
be laughed at, like,
yeah,
"Dude, that's why we're using this door, you
yeah,
idiot. We
yeah,
can't
yeah,
get in that door."
yeah,
But
yeah,
at the end, you
yeah.
could be the hero at the same time. If the door opens, you look around like, "It's a bunch of monkeys behind me.
It is, yeah.
See
Come on,
ya."
right? Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny.
Yeah, that's exactly that's such a good comparison. That's exactly what's happening right now.
Yeah.
It's this shared thought process that's not
Mhm.
true, and that's a
Mhm.
delusion.
Mhm.
And that's yeah. So this whole topic, which I clearly, I mean, me as a non-psychology psychiatrist type of person have heard of for a long time.
Right.
I've studied on my own certainly before, and I've
Yeah.
a million years ago read about it in a psychology class in college, and
Mhm. Mhm.
and to hear it now being said as that this doesn't exist and it's not true and this is a reality, and like to read this, like, this
It's
is off of Psychology Today, like,
mhm.
it's a
Oh,
pretty
I know.
big website. Now, not that I'm agreeing with the fact that there's not an agenda or narrative with anything out there anymore, but
Right.
it's not like I'm finding this in the doldrums of the internet either. This is right there.
Oh,
This is with everyone reading.
yeah. Well, and I think it almost proves the point of a mass messaging system, right? Like
Right.
that's what people are talking about here. It's like, and
Mhm.
here you are writing this article that kind of is
People can't
is
be
doing that.
centered that way. We can't. There's no way people would actually do that. There's no way people in charge would actually create this
Yeah.
formation, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's never
Okay.
happened before.
Never.
You
Never.
know, don't
Yeah.
look back at. Well, first of all, maybe we should start taking all the textbooks away, and stop
Yeah.
teaching certain things. And, like, let's just, the more we remove history. I mean, not to get into politics, but when our president came out and said that, the George Floyd incident was a bigger was a
Yeah.
bigger a bigger structure to our society than what Dr. Martin Luther King did.
I know.
That's exactly
Jesus.
what is going on. Is we got to
Mhm.
start taking away what people have remembered and
Mhm.
stick them 5 minutes from now, because that's all we want them to know about, because
Mhm.
removing these things from
Yeah.
their brains is the only way we can actually make this work.
Right.
And
Oh yeah.
now people want to call this tinfoil, because as it's
Right.
being related right now, this is being related to, because Dr. Malone has come out and been criticized for saying, well, he's in somehow Dr. Malone's now responsible for inventing mass formation psychosis. I don't know how that happened. I mean, literally, I wish
Right.
I had my damn textbook. 'Cause I feel
I
like it
know.
was one of the few I couldn't sell back at
Oh
the end of the
really?
semester either. Like, it was one of those,
Uh-huh.
like, you can get $1 for this. I'm like, screw that, I'll
Yeah.
keep it.
Yeah. Right.
God knows where it is now, but
Yeah.
it's one of those, like, but what are you talking about? Throughout
Mhm.
history, this has been used over and over again for many different reasons. But
Yeah.
this is psychiatrists now dismissing this as, well, people can't be controlled in this facet. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Is that what that article says? They can't be controlled in
There,
that way?
it's more of a, this is the theory is, Dr. Malone is saying this is the way that they're going to get everybody vaccinated for COVID. And they're saying, well, that can't be possible. There's
Oh
no
my
way
god.
that, first of all, that's not what's going on here. And secondly,
Yeah.
that's doesn't even, this theory doesn't exist. And so what this guy wrote is, it says he's not dismissing that this isn't a term used in psychology like the other ones did. It was
Mhm.
more of a, we're gonna, look at this as more of like a, a kind of word versus word type of deal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
We're
yeah.
looking at it like
Uh-huh.
it's phonetics, guys. I mean, this is a term. It's being incorrectly kind of marketed,
Yeah.
and it's. I mean, it says psychiatry has always been careful not to label culturally sanctioned beliefs like religious beliefs that we talked about as delusions.
Mhm.
Accordingly, delusions are defined as fixed and false beliefs that are idiosyncratic to the believer and not shared within a culture or subculture. That said, it has long been recognized that delusions are sometimes shared between people. So basically, what he's saying is the behavior versus the belief is
Right.
what's being discussed here. And that's why mass psychosis
Mm.
isn't what is being,
It's not
talked
happening here.
about. It's not
Right, right,
happening
right,
because
right,
we're
right.
talking about a belief versus a behavior,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
Shared psychosis or shared delusion has sometimes been applied to a
Uh-huh.
handful of people sharing a delusional belief, like we talked about with cults and stuff like that. But the
Yeah.
term was never meant to describe what Charles Mackay called popular delusions and the madness of crowds back in 1841.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Groupthink, which was basically the term that was used in some of the discussions
Yeah.
I had in
Yeah.
college about this stuff. It
Yeah.
was called
Yeah.
groupthink. This is a very
Right.
old term too, because
Right.
I'm
Right.
old. Whether it occurs in religion or politics is not a matter of delusional thinking, psychosis, or mental illness, and it's a disservice to those who have mental illness to claim it is. So you have to be mentally, you have to be, I mean, you have to have a mental illness
Uh,
now is the only way that we can actually have mass formation psychosis. This is
and
the
and
only people
and
susceptible.
and don't offend people who have a mental illness
And
by saying
how
that.
dare
Yeah.
you offend these
Oh my
people?
god. Yeah, see, I mean, oh boy.
Yeah.
Like with everything, you can see pieces of what he's trying to bring up and say. I'm not, but it's
And this is like the most, I would say,
mm, yeah,
level-headed
yeah,
article written. I mean, I went
yeah,
through the entire first page of different things, and it just kept, nope, nope, doesn't exist, not possible. Like this is
uh-huh,
a made up term, blah, blah, blah. And
uh-huh,
it kept coming
uh-huh,
up with Dr. Malone. If you guys don't know who Dr. Malone is, he was on the team that created the mRNA technology that's in the vaccinations for COVID-19. He
mhm,
has since come out and said this technology, one, was really truly not ready to be made into a form to
mhm,
inject into somebody. And this is
yeah,
not what we developed this for. And it has to do
mhm,
with all these other factors I'm not going to get into right now.
yeah,
But really, it's nailed towards the fact that he's like, first of all, they're claiming this is a vaccine. It's not, because this is gene
yeah,
therapy and this is the technology that's
mhm,
used. And I'm not making this stuff up. And this is not tinfoil. I had somebody argue this the other day, and I'm like, well, that's not. This is exactly what this technology is. You can go look it up, right?
right,
But this guy has
right,
since. The point is, this guy has since been turned into this like delusional person.
right,
And Mr. I've won a bunch of awards is now saying, well, he's now claiming he was the only inventor of the technology. Blah blah blah. He was a group of people. He's come out many times and said that. And the only thing he said is, I don't think this is a good idea. And
okay,
now he's turned and said, mass formation psychosis is what's being used to convince people this is the only way out of
yeah,
the
yeah,
pandemic.
exactly, exactly, yeah. Well, and he's so much pushback right now because of his interview on Joe Rogan, and Joe
Right.
Rogan has,
Hmm.
you know, millions and millions of people listen to him, like,
Right.
way more than watch any news show. And so the narrative that, boy, I mean, the news narrative is only one. There's only one news narrative going out there. So if you
Hmm.
have anything else, then so that's yeah. So anyway, I would encourage people, if you haven't listened to the Joe Rogan Malone interview, well worth your time.
Whether you
Make
think
your own decision.
whatever you think about
Yeah,
Rogan, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
These are
make your own
people he brings
decision.
people on to argue all the time and
Oh, yeah,
debate and
yeah,
form other opinions. Rogan, for whatever opinion you have of him, is an individual that allows his podcast and his discussion to be open-minded.
yeah.
He may
He's pretty
critique
good at
the guest, but he's damn
yeah,
good at it. That's
he's
why he has
pretty
millions and
he's
millions of
pretty good
followers.
at it.
That's why Spotify signed him to a lot of money
Yeah,
because
yeah.
people want to listen to this, and it's all of the population. It's not just one
Mhm.
directive. It's not one news network. It's not, you can get away from all that, but
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah, and
you want to
make
get
your own
information out.
decisions, right? If
Yes.
you make your own decisions on it,
Yep.
and that's the thing for me. I just want people to get information and make their own decisions, and
Mhm.
I think that's what what really resonated with me about him talking about mass formation psychosis was just how uh, how little people are thinking for themselves and just going with this narrative, whatever,
Mhm.
and
There's fear
pe-
tactic within
it's
that
yeah,
that's created too, is if you
yeah,
do start asking questions or you do
yeah,
have a debate with somebody,
yeah,
like we talked about at the beginning of the stream, is people get angry and they get
yeah,
defensive and
yeah,
you become the
yeah,
bad guy, and people don't like that. There's a conflict that starts from this,
hmm,
right? From
yeah,
whatever direction you go on, whatever piece of what's going on in this
hmm,
world,
yeah,
you create conflict. I mean, I've done this with people talking about the stock market and certain things that are happening within the stock market. These are people that have been trading a long time, and
yeah,
their fundamentals are solid, and they understand technical analysis, and they understand how derivatives work. They understand all these things, and I'll come in and this whole world of what they call the apes comes in to just basically just dismantle a piece of this
hmm,
market that is utterly corrupt and
yeah,
broken and being
yeah,
allowed to basically, it's corruption,
hmm,
and it's robbery. It's
hmm,
illegal what these funds are doing, and there's this argument
absolutely,
of that's not true. Like there's a whole group of people that say the whole market is corrupt and they'll never touch it, right?
yeah,
Which on some level they are right, but it's not 100% correct. But there's a
right,
whole group of people that have come out and said this is what's going to happen with certain stocks, and this is why you heard the term, hold on for dear life,
yeah,
and MOAS, which is the mother of all short squeezes. This is what's happening. And there's another group of people saying this is fictitious, and this is all information that's been made up by a group of people. And
uh-huh,
it's like,
uh-huh,
but if you're
uh-huh,
in, there's a smaller group of those people that say that no, this is what's going to happen, and you can either get
hmm,
in on this or not. I'm just telling you. I'm not giving
hmm,
you advice or like encouraging. I'm just telling you this is what I'm doing. This is why. If
hmm,
you don't agree with it, if you don't, your own research dictates otherwise, well, that's up to you. But the numbers are the numbers.
right,
The you know
right,
the people involved and forerunning this are doing what they're doing, and there's no denial of that. That's why you have SEC investigations now. That's why you have transparency laws being changed. But there's still a giant group of people that will deny it and say you're
yeah,
crazy,
yeah, oh yeah,
and
I know,
you've been duped, and you're going to lose a bunch of money, and blah. It's the same thing. And if you
and
go against that, you're
yeah,
like, well, maybe I'm wrong.
and people have such a short memory,
Hmm.
you know, like,
Yep.
I mean, 2008 was not that long ago.
Yeah, and you talk about similarities to what's
Yeah,
happening right now and the same
yeah,
types of research that's being put up, and the same thing is happening with the people that have raised their hand and said, "Hey,
yeah,
I see a massive problem here." And they go,
uh-huh,
"You're crazy. You need to
yeah,
shut up. Give me
yeah,
my money back." And guess what
yeah,
happens in 2008? Those
yeah,
guys,
we're right.
they said, "Fine, no one's going to listen to
Yeah,
me. I'm going to capitalize. Screw
yeah,
you. I'm
yeah,
rich, bitch."
yeah,
Same thing's
yeah,
happening
yeah,
now. I
I know.
mean,
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it?
but it's all part of
Yeah,
the same sort of phenomena, and it's just like you
hmm,
can't people act this way for a reason.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. I just think it's super important that we all, yeah, just really connect to things and tools that can ground you and center you and bring you into your body and allow you to actually make decisions in a good way, not a reactive way.
mhm.
I know we've said that a bunch of times today, but I don't know what else to tell people. It's going to be really bumpy for a while. So you better figure something out or you're just going to be miserable. And I
Mhm.
refuse to be miserable during this.
No.
I'm not. I'm going to I'm going to engage in life, and it's going to be challenging, but you know, it's
Yeah.
and I'm glad, like people like, you in my life and other people to like, keep, get connected with, and I think that's so important as well.
Yeah, it is, and you've gotta just, like we said, stick to your guns,
Mhm.
stick to your game plan, have confidence in you, in
Yeah.
whatever facet that resolves in is, your financial decisions, your health decisions, all of
Mhm.
that is it's gonna be hard to continue to stick with, but if you can get through this,
Mhm.
you will have more confidence later for the next trial and tribulation
Mhm.
to say, listen, I was okay then, I can do this
Yeah.
again. And the more we can draw off of past events, the easier it becomes in some ways. And it's still gonna be stressful, but you get it figured out.
Yeah, what's the Marcus Aurelius quote? It's something like the obstacle is the way or something like that. Basically,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
meaning when you run into an obstacle, there's a something that in that experience will give you the way forward, will show you the
Hmm.
way forward, and yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot. So,
Yeah,
because
it's so true. I mean, all these
yeah,
old philosophers and I'd call them
Stoics,
scientists too.
yeah.
There's just, man, it's just doesn't
Yeah,
ever change. If you understand that with from,
yeah,
even thousands of years ago, if you
totally.
understand what was being written and what was being said at the
Mhm,
time, there's no way you can debate that, well, that can't be possible. Well,
mhm,
why not? It already happened.
mhm.
It's already, it's a precedent set, man. So
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, exactly, exactly.
don't feel fear in questioning anything.
Yeah,
Don't feel like you can't ask questions, and don't feel like, what you've set up is not right all of a sudden because suddenly more people than not seem to disagree or going in
mhm,
different or walking on a different street. If you're like, guys,
right.
I've walked down this street, this is the way to go home. I've
Mhm,
done this 100 times. Well, we're going this way, and everyone
mhm,
goes that way, and you're like, but that doesn't make sense. Why would you go?
mhm,
I know where to go.
mhm.
Nope, this is the way to go. You
Yeah,
you feel for a moment like,
yeah.
maybe they have a better way, but you know for a
Mhm,
fact that that
mhm,
is the way home. It's hard. It's your brain can start playing tricks on you, like, but are you sure?
mhm,
Maybe you're reading the street
mhm.
wrong. Maybe you're confused. Maybe you're having this delusional episode and you think you are somewhere, but you're not. Maybe you're in a different dimension. I mean, who knows, right? But
Right.
you start creating
Oh,
this,
yeah.
you
Oh, yeah.
formulate, your brain starts really working hard against you, and you're just like, no, maybe I shouldn't go that way.
Yeah,
That's really weird because I feel like I've always gone that way.
right.
You fight yourself, and that's where you start getting in trouble and just like, nope, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Or I mean, I remember having this in like in high school, I had this a lot happen to me, a lot. I feel like it's probably 10 times, but where we're sitting in a class and the question is asked of, say in math of a certain problem, and I'm like, I think I know the answer. And everyone raises their hand and it's like da, 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 and there's like no, 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 no. And it's like, well, everyone got it wrong, and these are all super smart people,
Mm,
but I think I have the answer.
yeah,
I'm not gonna raise my hand because
yeah.
clearly if they don't know, I don't know.
I
And
don't
then
know.
the teacher
Right,
does it
right.
and you're just like, "But oh god, it was right."
I I
But you
I
didn't.
did know.
I
Yeah,
did know. And it was like, but
yeah,
20 people were wrong,
yeah,
and all of
yeah,
them had a different
yeah,
answer from you. And it was, you start creating this, well, clearly I'm not right then. There's no way I got it if no one else, these people didn't get it right,
yeah.
you know?
Well, and these are the programmings that are deep within us, too. So it's like really good to be conscious of that, being aware
Mhm.
that, you know, having some compassion for yourself. And that's what I was talking about before, like that space, like to separate and see things more clearly, right? Like,
Mhm.
because if you're not, then you're just, yeah, to have that space a little bit where, oh, okay, I can act instead of just being like immersed in that
Yep.
pattern, in that pattern. It's like, oh, look, I see that I sometimes don't speak up because I think I might not know the answer. And that's okay. I don't need to do that anymore. And,
Mhm.
and, and you can actually then engage in a different way.
Yeah.
Um, so, which
Well,
is cool.
it is cool. It is cool when you get all that put together.
Yeah. Yeah. Not easy, but
No, it's not easy.
it's totally possible. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll
So,
leave you with this, and then we can spin our way out of this. But this was the part that I read the bottom of this, and I'm like, oh my god, I would love to have this guy on to talk to him literally,
mm,
because what he said is actually explaining it's explaining exactly what he's trying to debate. Right? He's already
mm-hmm,
made the point on the wrong side of his argument, because
mm-hmm,
it's like we talk about. It says the physician Robert Malone, not Dr. Malone, but claimed that getting vaccinated or taking other COVID precautions
mm-hmm.
can be explained by mass formation psychosis. Why isn't that correct? A delusion is a belief, not a behavior. I could argue that. The
Mm-hmm.
question we should ask is, what beliefs are driving whether people are getting vaccinated or not? Beliefs
And again, the single way out.
or not. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
This
So,
or not.
yeah,
This or not.
yeah,
Yeah, there's
right.
no other solution,
No other solution,
right?
just this one.
Just this one.
Mm-hmm.
If they're getting vaccinated because they believe that the advice of scientists and public health epidemiologists is sound, or that following evidence from research studies supporting the efficacy of vaccines or wearing masks, well, then we have another
Right,
solution here,
right, right.
makes sense, that's obviously not a delusion. Why not?
Uh-huh.
Why not? You're just being told something. Well, I mean,
Uh-huh,
why wouldn't that
uh-huh.
be?
Right,
But not
right,
believing scientists or Dr. Fauci and the CDC or
right.
research studies, and instead following the guidance of Dr. Robert Malone, he didn't put doctor in here, isn't a delusion either. Well, wait a second.
Right.
What
Oh
what
my
is this
God.
guy doing? This guy was in front of Dr. Fauci and the CDC years earlier with his technology
Mhm,
in his group that
mhm,
was coming up with stuff. For especially for cancer research,
mhm.
huge at the time for this technology.
Yeah,
Suddenly he's not even doctor anymore. He's just Robert Malone. And
yeah,
because he's saying there might be other ways to deal with this stuff. No,
yeah,
there's not. He
yeah,
is now the person on
yeah,
the other end of this delusion.
yeah.
The end result may be a fixed false belief, but that's
Uh-huh,
not a product of mental illness. It's a product of pervasive mistrust in authoritative sources of information,
uh-huh.
resulting in vulnerability to misinformation and
Uh,
disinformation that's out there in the world.
wow, wow. Don't listen to anything else but what we tell you.
It
That's
doesn't matter
basically
who
what
it
it.
is anymore. I don't
Yep,
care. I don't care who it is.
yep,
If it doesn't go against
yep,
the mass,
yep.
which is
Amazing,
exactly what he's just explained
amazing.
here. If you go against it, how is it not mass formation psychosis at this point?
I know he like proves his
He
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 basically
proves what he's
proves
trying
math
to.
like
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. What a did you
That
ever do did you ever
social ill of society, not the mental illness of individuals. We're not even talking about mental illness.
I know.
Oh my god.
That was a weird term that threw in there, yeah.
Uh,
Um, crazy. Were you ever on the debate team?
I was in class. I was not on the team. No.
You did a debate class though?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wish I would have done that. There's just an I don't know. I think people don't know how to debate, and they don't know how to
No.
they don't know, and I'll put myself in there. I don't know, uh, in the way that I'd like to, in the sense
Mhm.
of, the debate class said, "Here's a question, pick a side, and then and you know prove your
Yeah.
prove your point,
Formulate it.
take formulate your side, your argument,
Mhm.
and how solid is it." And it wasn't about who was say right or wrong. It was about how well you could back up your argument in a way,
Right.
back
Explain
it
it
all
to a
up,
point
explain it.
where, yeah,
Yeah. So and now it's like nobody knows how to do that. Nobody knows how to because
they don't know how and they're afraid
yeah,
to do it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Because what it means is you have to have that there's nuance. I mean, I think any good debate team knows there's more than one way to answer a question, more than one way to approach a
Right.
situation.
Right.
And so the debate is not necessarily the way. The debate is like, okay, how do we move forward in the best way
Mhm.
for the moment? And that's always what science has been. That's always what medicine. Well, that's a in theory, what medicine is in, and I think when you hear an article, see an article like that, it's like, wow, like that's
Mhm.
I, anyway. I know we're wrapping up here, but all these things come to my mind or stir around like the
Yeah, and
terms like misinformation and
yeah,
disinformation, and I don't. It's just it's so fascinating to me that those are now things that are
those
they
are now
never
things
before.
that are of concern, which no one ever concerned themselves with before. I mean, look at YouTube. People are out there saying, just from my perspective and what I do. If we
Hmm.
want to talk about misinformation, and I know you've experienced this, I know my
Hmm.
wife has experienced this. People get on the
Hmm.
internet with all kinds of crap, and I call it
Hmm.
crap because it's garbage.
Hmm.
There's anyone's allowed to be out there just being, like we're sitting here right now. I mean, who's to say that
Hmm.
we, you get
Hmm.
information from anywhere, and it's information is just what you've absorbed from somebody that's or a some sort of tool, a book or whatever it is, and
Hmm.
then you regurgitate it, right?
Hmm.
You've absorbed something from somewhere and you regurgitate it. Textbooks in school are
Totally.
information. Doesn't Whether we know that's true or not is up for debate, and that's what the whole point of debating was, is to like,
Right.
okay, go back into real life. Did this
Hmm.
happen? Was this said? Was this written? Who did, whatever it was? And that's what no one cared about before. And people
Yeah.
would come to me and say, well, I watched on YouTube that blah 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 blah.
Hmm.
Katrina would have it all the time. People come in from
Yeah.
whatever that. Well, I read this is this and this, and then you're telling me this, and that's not right. Like, she's like, where do you get this information? Oh, I Googled it. Oh my God,
Hmm.
I'm the expert. That's why you're
Yeah.
here,
They call it Doctor Google. Yeah.
Dr. Google. Just like
Yeah.
everything else, construct. I mean, we have
Yeah. Yeah.
HGTV
Uh-huh.
spits out all
Yeah.
kinds of.
Yeah.
I mean, I would call that misinformation, but it's not accurate.
Hmm.
Because if you go and do what that person just did, one, it's not going to take you one day. It's going to take you 2 months. Two,
Right.
you don't know how to solder that pipe. It's just you're going to spend all day messing around with that thing. It's going to leak. You know why? Because you don't have the training.
Yeah.
And the guy
Right.
that explained it didn't explain it correctly,
Right.
or he
Right.
left out a lot of things that you need. So it
Yeah. Yeah.
it happens all the time. It's always happened all the time. And all of a sudden, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And there's only one way to deliver this whatever's going on. This is all misinformation except for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
What?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sucks that there's misinformation out there, that people are, but you know what? It's life, right? Like,
Buyer
hey,
beware.
hey, I thought I could solder that pipe, and I
Mhm.
clearly now I've got a flooded basement.
Yeah, I turn
It's
the
like,
water on and it's everywhere. What do I do? Hire a professional.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So I mean,
yeah.
there's which in theory, you would expect like public health in this context to be that. It's like, oh, I don't know the
Mhm.
information. I'd like to lean on somebody that has that information,
Right.
which is
Yep.
a very reasonable thing to expect and want to do. Nothing
Mhm.
wrong with that. But what we're saying is that that became the only messaging.
Yeah.
And when anyone starts to say, what about this? What about that? Now it's suddenly labeled as all this other noise, and that's really, where, yeah, where it's dangerous and
Yep.
unfortunate. But,
Yep.
crazy, man.
Crazy, crazy. Well, take away from this what you will, but just be confident in who you are and what you think and
Yeah.
what you've learned that's actually performed for you,
Yeah.
and stick with it, and continue to
Hmm.
ask questions. Like, the other thing we
Hmm.
always talk about is continue to learn.
Yeah.
And learning is important. That's gathering information and then putting it to the test, putting that information to the test. Does it work or not? Are you getting results or not? I mean, it's very
Hmm.
easy. It's just like any sort of scientific
Hmm.
data that you're trying to gather. You do research, and does it work or not? If it doesn't work, then you go gather more information. But
Yeah.
if it starts working, don't waver from that.
Yeah.
That's and everything is different, but do what you do. Every golf swing is different. Is it
Mhm.
working?
Yeah.
Don't go away from that. I don't care if that guy's swing looks different.
Right. Right.
This is
Yeah.
your swing.
Totally. Yeah. And I would just,
So,
say, don't forget, really practice your breathing right now. Like,
mhm.
don't
Slow
think that
down.
that's, don't think that's just a trite, like weird, thing to do. Like, no, it's good for your health. It's good for your mental health. It's good for your, digestion, your immune system, and also for decision making and getting
Mhm.
clear about things that you want to do, and especially about what's true for you.
Yep. 100%.
So, yep.
100%. Right on, man.
Alrighty.
Dr. Matt, it's
Alrighty.
been a pleasure. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Good
Nice to see
talk.
you. Yep.
We will be back on the next one. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't. Ding the bell so you know when the next live stream is coming up and all the other content. And until next time, guys, enjoy your evening.
Yeah.
Take a
Enjoy your
deep
evening.
breath
Yeah.
and just be confident. You'll be okay.
Yep.
We'll be all right.
Yep. All right,
All right,
guys.
man. Later.
See ya.